I'm Connor Old and welcome to another episode of Masters of Controlled Chaos. And today we're going to be looking at a director that I've been meaning to do, but I wasn't necessarily sure if the justification was right. But now that his new movie American Made is coming out in theaters this weekend, I decided, hey, why not, cover him. That should be a lot of fun. He is the director of Edge of Tomorrow, of Swingers, and of the Bourne Identity. He is none other than Doug Liman. Welcome back, guys. If you're new to the series, what we do every single week is we break down a new filmmaker and talk about the general idea of what makes them great. We also look what I consider their best movie, my favorite movie of theirs, and then an underrated movie of theirs. And Doug Liman is an interesting director because he's such a chameleon. I was so interested, like someone like a Rob Reiner, when I first heard about him, because and you started to first learn about his name and realize some of the projects that he did, because he's sort of a really underrated director in terms of the fact that he's created a lot of great movies and he's done a lot for the actual Hollywood industry as a whole. But his name goes largely unrecognized. So if you don't know, like I said at the top, he created Bourne Identity, Swingers, Go, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Edge of Tomorrow. He's making American Made now. He also made The Wall this year with John Cena and Aaron Taylor Johnson. And just really interesting director because it's like Swingers, who do you think directed it? Well, everyone thinks Jon Favreau because he's a big time director now, but he actually only wrote the film and Doug Liman was held on to do the directing part. And then you look at someone like The Bourne Identity, everyone considers it Paul Greengrass's films. Why? Because he made 2, 3, and Jason Bourne, and sort of maybe perfected the ideology that Doug Liman created. And even something like even like Edge of Tomorrow, it's like, who directed it? It's sort of like, he's not a household name, even though he's been directing a lot of great movies. One thing that I think he's a great director at, he's a great action director. People nowadays are starting to look at, the John Wick guys, Chad Stahelski and David Leitch. I get the two confused, but I think Chad Stahelski did John Wick 1 with David Leitch, and then he did John Wick 2 by himself, and then David Leitch did Atomic Blonde, and David Leitch is also doing a new Deadpool 2. So these are sort of these new hot directors that made this cool action movie that are going off and doing these great things. And then Doug Liman sort of is put to the side where it's like, he started the Bourne franchise, this huge franchise that not only was a huge franchise for, I think it was Universal, but actually started a new sort of trend of genre action movies and sort of changed the way modern action day movies look today. And he didn't get a lot of credit for that. It was booted off the next 2 movies. And then he does something like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the $110 million mega movie star thing that we don't see often nowadays, and it makes like $500 million at the box office. It's a big hit. So interesting things like that. And then you look back at his career, he's made, Swingers, of course, and then he followed that up with an interesting sort of character piece with a Go. But I think going back to the action part, I like Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Bourne Identity, of course, is a great movie. Edge of Tomorrow is a great movie. So is The Wall. Wall's a good movie, and it sort of stretched a little bit too long. But I think what he's able to do is really create great characters, and that's where he comes from with Swingers, which is very much a character piece, and then Go, which is even more of sort of an ensemble Pulp Fiction type character piece, and then takes those 2 aspects and puts it into his action movies. A lot of action movie directors come into the fact that, it's an action movie. I love the Schwarzenegger, the Stallones in my past days, or the Liam Neeson's Taken, and I'm going to try to riff off that, right? And then it doesn't really work. So now when you take Doug Liman, a director who starts off and just sort of these small indie drama comedy type things, he really worries about character and then transfers that over into something like The Bourne Identity or Edge of Tomorrow. Another thing he loves to do, or what he really is great at doing, I think, is working with actors and really knowing how to use actors. A lot of people can say, oh yeah, I like Tom Hardy, he's probably good at everything, cast him in this or not, or whatnot, right? Or just say, Jack Reacher is an action movie. Tom Cruise, because he's the big action star, right? So, or The Mummy. It's like, Tom Cruise should not have been in The Mummy, but he's this big action star, and I don't know, he wanted to get a lot of money. But what Doug Liman's been able to do is cast the right actors. Something like Matt Damon in The Bourne Identity, people didn't think Matt Damon could be an action star, and then he totally proved them wrong because he really focused on the sort of the dramatic chops that Matt Damon has, or then helped him worry about the action and the set pieces, and then that worked out really well, and knew that Matt Damon was right for that role. For Mr. and Mrs. Smith, he has the Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, sort of powerhouse at the time, and they broke up pretty recently, but they were sort of this big sort of power couple in Hollywood. Even with Swingers, he read Jon Favreau's script, and then what Jon Favreau probably went up to him and says, listen, I want to star in it, right? And then he has like this unlikable character in Trent, played by Vince Vaughn, and it's like, how do you sort of work with that? And he really understands that just like the character is what that matters. And even something like the best example, I think, Edge of Tomorrow, where Tom Cruise is not this immoral action star. He goes down and really breaks him down as a character and strips him down. He's this cocky guy, but he has to learn and sort of strip away the charismatic and really learn sort of a lesson that not a lot of movies do. But if you look back at it, all the great Tom Cruise movies do that, whether it be A Few Good Men or Jerry Maguire. They do a lot of this sort of stripping down of Tom Cruise's persona in the general audience's eye, and then that makes him even more likable because it makes him seem even more of a real person. So he knows how to use actors. He understands the movie he's making. He gives it to them. However, though, he definitely does not have a style whatsoever. You look at those movies and you're like, okay, they're action movies, but Edge of Tomorrow is a sci-fi movie. Mr. Smith is a little more stylish, but Go is almost like a Pulp Fiction-y rip-off type thing. I mean, it's a good movie, but it's like you see that influence. Swingers feels like sort of like this Reservoir Dogs type movie. So like she started off as this Tarantino-esque director in the 90s, sort of indie movement, and rode that wave into more of the big blockbuster movies, and then sort of had a bit of a dip with movies like Fair Game, but then he's sort of coming back now, and I'm really excited for American Made. The reviews aren't out at the time of filming, so I think it's going to be good, though. I like Tom Cruise. Donald Gleason chooses good projects too, and it just feels like it's going to be a fun time. If anything, I think that the score is probably going to be like 60% or higher. That's my guess. Similar to how Gold, I think, worked with last year, except I think this is moving up a little earlier, so it's probably more of an above average movie, sort of at best, or not at best, but at worst, I think, in my opinion. And yeah, so I just really wanted to highlight him because he is really a chameleon that can do a lot, and he's really doing great stuff in the action genre, and he's not necessarily recognized, and I want to recognize him as a sort of a true OG that started off with Swingers and still hasn't died, and as we always talk about, the best directors don't die, and he's totally a director's director. He doesn't write any of his movies, so he's totally focused on just directing, and that's actually how he even got his start. So just an interesting guy who's very focused on directing and makes interesting movies that definitely don't have his stamp on it, but that always makes sure that they service the story. But now let's move over into what I consider his best movie and my favorite movie of his, The Bourne Identity. Okay, what is there not to say about The Bourne Identity? The Bourne Identity, of course, I already mentioned, started this incredible franchise for Universal, a 4-film franchise, and I guess if you conclude the Bourne Legacy, a 5-film franchise, which I actually like all of the Bourne movies. I really like Jason Bourne, the last one that a lot of people didn't like, but those were directed by other directors. This one is Doug Liman. He's the star of this franchise. The reason why he wasn't on the sequels is because you hear the sort of really troubled development and sort of him battling with studio executives. He had a hard time with the movie, and that's why I don't think they wanted to bring him back. But nonetheless, he does not have any credit, and he should totally have a lot more credit of creating and starting this trend of the modern day action movie. We've actually even seen a backlash of something like John Wick, which was very much like cameras back like this, one take, really doing the action scenes, working a lot on the stunts. We see Atomic Blonde, Charlize Theron, really working on the stunts and the stunt work and training for a year, doing it. Keanu Reeves, of course, with John Wick and John Wick 2, and it's very much about stunts and letting them play out and look like real punches and whatnot. But before that, it was a little more sort of cheesy, a little more campy, and this really sort of grounded in the 21st century. Of course, this is a great espionage spy thriller, and that's one point I want to really make out about this movie that I really love, even compared to some of the other ones. But it's not my favorite. Bourne Supremacy is my favorite because it has more of these aspects, but this is a real close second because what it does is it's a spy movie in terms of using that 21st century of data tapping into your phones and sort of underground sort of CIA government things. So the theme that we've seen in 70s conspiracy themes, 70s conspiracy movies that we've seen again in something like The Winter Soldier. Just a great thriller before a great action movie, and it's really that's what makes it grounded. It's not these big amazing Bad Boys 2 action set pieces that Bad Boys 2, I love the movie, but that's not realistic or whatnot. And and it's just fun. You know, those movies can exist, but this created a whole subgenre of movies that a lot of action movies tried to replicate and couldn't. And now sort of this is very much grounded, realistic, gritty. You know, those terms have been announced for a while, but sort of that sort of feeling of making it feel real, making it feel like this is a real agent that's going through. I know like interesting things that they've done throughout the series, which is just pulling up a camera and shooting Matt Damon as he walks through the streets, and people are sort of like looking around like, what's going on? Because that's what serves the story in Jason Bourne. Of course, like Matt Damon, I mentioned, is an incredible performance here. He totally nails the character of Jason Bourne and really made him into not only an action star, but a movie star that can say like, wow, Matt Damon can do every genre, you know, and it really blew a lot of people away. And the main thing that was not only by making it grounded and sort of gritty and realistic, one of the big reasons why the audience felt that way and why people respond to it, including myself, is shaky cam. Now, a lot of people don't like shaky cam. A lot of people get sort of nauseous by it. But what it does is it creates this really interesting grounded reality, almost documentarian style, where the camera is not on this sort of crane that we know, or it's on like a, you know, steady cam, just like sort of going along, and you know you're watching a movie. What it does is like when you feel sort of like when Jason Bourne punches this guy, the camera almost shakes a bit, or, you know, there's a lot of cuts, there's a lot of editing, so it makes it feel almost more intense than it does, almost like you feel in a real fight. I haven't gotten really in a real fight before, but, you know, when you're in there and you're just like throwing punches and you're getting hit and you're almost seeing, like they say, flashes of light, right? You just see things coming at you, right? That's sort of like the editing where it's fast and you're trying to comprehend what's going on. But when I look at it, it's not as shaky at all as sort of the Supremacy and Jason Bourne and also made them in those movies, but definitely has a shakiness to it. But what it does, it's a good shaky cam. A lot of action movies really threw this out the window, and this created a bad trend in the terms of a lot of movies were just using shaky cam to cover up bad stunt work. So it'd just be cutting all the time. You know, there's a great thing I think in Taken 2 or Taken 3 where Liam Neeson jumps a fence and there's like 100 cuts in like 3 seconds. It's like a joke. It's like, and he's just making this jump over this fence so much more intense, and it's like, no, it's not. You can't even comprehend what's going on. It's just a bunch of flashes on screen, and like I'm having epilepsy. But this is really great where it's not that shaky. If you look back at it, it's like, okay, it's not bad. It's really well done actually, because and Paul Greengrass does it really well, and so does Doug Liman, and just understanding how you can take one shot and you can slow it down and take frame by frame and understand that, okay, here's his punch, then if we cut over there, you still see the punch land or whatever, and then you see, like, you understand that, you know, he's grabbing something, he's hitting something with that, he's getting blocked, you can piece it together. But the thing is, it's almost like it's a fast forward version because everything is so fast and the cuts are so short. But it really works to a great effect in creating that sort of, you know, fast-pacedness of like, he's on the run, he's on the chase. And let's talk about the character of Jason Bourne, just an incredible character that was able to last this long, because he's very much like a blank slate where he just wakes up and he doesn't know, you know, who he is, and he has to figure out his past. And that's a great just sort of vessel for the audience to portray themselves onto the character and really pretend like we're that guy, and we're like, okay, what's going on? Okay, how would I figure out in this situation? You know, I love when movies do that. Put me in the situation and say, how would I do this? How would I figure this out? How would I respond? And just his way of like, okay, I can fight really well, but like, how do I figure out who I am? Why am I like this? And then just the flashbacks throughout the series that explain sort of why he is really great. But we're talking about the Bourne Identity. And what I love about it is that it's such an innovative thing of the shaky cam, but it is totally the Hollywood thing of give them what they want and twist it a bit. It's definitely reminiscent of the 70s conspiracy spy thrillers and really just a straightforward action movie. But with that innovativeness, it creates something that seems very different. But it really is a pretty straightforward story, and it works because of that. Just as like this sort of this road movie, this exposition is very easy because of the nature of the character. It's just a great idea, and I think Doug Liman totally nails it and does a great job in directing this. And the thing is, what I talked about at the beginning was the characters, and really caring about their motivations and getting an understanding of their motivations so that you care about their well-being. And then just the final sort of 20 minutes of the movie, that sort of sniper in the cornfield type thing, that was really intense and sort of pulse-pounding. I think this is like more of a thriller than it is an action movie, and that's why I think I really love it as one of my favorite sort of action movies of all time, because I'm more of a thriller guy than I am an action guy. Okay, now let's move over to what I consider an underrated movie of his, which is Go. I had never heard of this movie until, I know I was crapping on it at the beginning, but I never heard of this movie until I looked in Doug Liman's career, and people were saying, like, this is arguably his best movie. I mean, this is the reason why he got Bourne Identity. Like, he was on a streak where it's like, you know, Swingers, great cult classic, then Go, this really critically acclaimed movie, low budget, then he gets the Bourne Identity. Big problems with the studios, but turns out a huge success for the studio. He's hot right now, he's really hot, he's a hot new talent. And then they give him Mr. and Mrs. Smith $110 million. And some people don't like that movie, but it totally launches him, it makes a bunch of money and sort of makes him like this big time deal. And then he slumps a bit, and now he's sort of having his career resurgence with Edge of Tomorrow, which was an incredible movie, making Emily Blunt a great action movie. I was gonna go with that for underrated, but then I was like, you know what, it was underrated at the time because not a lot of people saw it, but so many people are saying it's underrated, it's become now rated. It's like, people consider that a great movie. I mean, look at Rotten Tomatoes, it's a 92, 91. It's a great movie. They're making a sequel. I mean, I think it's called Live, Die, Repeat, and Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow. It was supposed to be called Live, Die, Repeat, and now they're making a sequel based on the alternate title to Edge of Tomorrow. It's so confusing. I don't know what they're gonna do, but I'm excited for that anyways, because I love a good Tom Cruise movie, which is why I think he understands Tom Cruise, so when he puts American Made out there, I think he'll understand how to use Tom Cruise really well, and it should just be sort of like this fun energy movie. But Go, I never heard of this movie, and people say it's like Liman's Pulp Fiction because of the story structure of how it's an event with sort of these three central characters, and then you see the events through this character. So it'll be like, I forget the names, but like Penny, and there's three people that work at a supermarket, and it's Penny, and then Penny goes off and does her stuff with her friend, and then there's Scotty, or I think that's actually one of them. And he goes to Las Vegas and has a great time there. But it's totally like interesting sort of non-linear narration, not narration style, but non-linear style storytelling, and definitely drugs and violence, and just sort of like realistic, but Pulp Fiction-esque, where it's not as stylized, but sort of these kids or these teenagers and the crazy things that they do and the sort of crazy situations that they get into, and it's fun, and you know, it's a good movie. I think you should check it out. It's not a high recommend for me. You know, I'd recommend Bourne Identity or Edge of Tomorrow before that, but I think it's an underrated one. Go is definitely one where I never heard of, but it was a great movie. I really enjoyed it. So anyways, guys, for all those reasons, that's why Doug Liman is a master of controlled chaos. Make sure you like the video, comment below, let me know, are you excited for American Made? Have you heard of Doug Liman? Will you maybe check out a couple of his movies? I'd love to hear your comments. That's one of the reasons I do this, is because I love to hear the comments and want to create this awesome film community. But that's it, guys. I'm Connor Old, and until next time, stay tuned.